Hello, here is my favorite Mustone lens that really isn't talked about much either. You think you'd have to spend $5,000 or $6,000 on a current autofocus, a Nikkor 300mm. This is the 400mm f3.5. You spend $6,000 basically for a 300mm f2.8 current autofocus lens, which you would. Now you can also find obviously the old AFF first version of this autofocus, this lens and autofocus, 2000 plus, depends on who you buy it from. Not a good lens. That lens is not good even though its construction is really well done. That is admittedly a Nikon failure because the autofocus system is insanely slow, and it's one of the main reasons that many shooters were bummed by that, and they switched over to Canon because that lens, its construction and everything was fine, and the image quality was fine. It was an autofocus bummer. And anyway, I recommend this one. As actually, I've owned two of these lenses in the past. I should have held on to the first one, and I think I lost my mind. I think the reason I sold the second one is because I got married, and I had a lag there in the work that I was doing, and it's like, I don't need to hold on to the 300mm 2.8, so I got another one. So rather crazy, but that's the way it is, right? You should always, by the way, here's a little secret on lenses. You should always ship them with the aperture all the way open, like f2.8 or whatever. And you should always store them with the aperture all the way closed. The aperture all the way open, like 2.8 or whatever, 3.5, the blades actually have no way to actually collapse if you get a heavy jar. So you ship them, or you actually transport them open, and you store them closed. So anyway, back to the 300mm 2.8. This is an AIS version, AIS 300mm f2.8. This one I think dates back to 1981. Built-in lens hood, also a focus stop. 420 using my teleconverter. This is still a damn fast lens with my 14B teleconverter. This lens is 420 millimeters. This is a damn sharp lens. Actually, technically, however, the 400mm f3.5 is sharper. Both of them at f4, not trying to judge them at 2.8 versus 3.5, half stop. Internal focus, this is an EDIF. The internal focus on this, you can see I can actually focus it with my pinky finger. Just the smooth as frog fur, silk, sex, and sugar. To me, and you can actually get these, sometimes it is as cheap as $880, but usually right around $1,000, especially one in this shape. Obviously, both of these lenses are the case that you would never think of actually supporting your camera by the camera straps, rather only the lens by its lens straps. And of course, this isn't a case where you put a lens on the camera, you put the camera on the lens. The camera becomes an asswart to the lens. Becomes an asswart to the lens itself. Nice built-in lens hood. One complaint that I've got that everybody else has is it's a little too damn short. It actually should be about yay long for flare, but no big deal. Incredible lens. I mean, I said this is the third one that I've owned. I fell in love with it the first time I used it back in photography school. Same thing as the 400mm f3.5. You have a 39mm drop-in filter vis-a-vis the bay right here. You should always have the filter in. Why? Because if you leave it out, you stick the blank ring in there, then it's actually going to change the focus where infinity is going to actually change. So it's designed, as Nikon will tell you, to always have a 39mm filter in place. But anyway, this is a 300mm 2.8 AIS, obviously manually focused. As I've stated before, unless you plan on shooting rabid squirrels or birds in flight, or ball players as they're jiggling their balls around. I mean, a lot of sports too. You got stuff where people aren't moving. I mean, for events, for all wildlife except for fast-moving animals and birds in flight. I mean, birds in trees, not an issue. You can't manually focus a bird in a tree. There's something wrong with you or your eyesight. You can't manually focus a moose or a deer or something like. Well, you got an issue too. Even somebody that has no manual focus skills at all can learn how to use this lens and be happily using it. It's outside of the fact that both these lenses are insanely heavy and will spank your ass if you don't wield them correctly. Events, concerts, someone's on stage, unless it's hard rock and they're constantly gyrating on stage, back and forth when you're sitting in front of the microphone. What do you got an issue with a manual focus manual focus lens like this for? You don't. So, something that really nobody mentions and that should be considered is that basically for 85% of what a current 300mm f2.8 or whatever autofocus lens can do, I can do on this lens also. Easily, at a rate of about 70 to 80%, yes, easily. A bird up in a tree doesn't take any issues with manual focus lens, nor do people on stage or some singer in front of the microphone. You can't manually focus that, then you can't manually focus anything. So, what is actually limited as far as what I can't do with these manual focus super tellies, these honking logs, actually these are Titanic lenses, is not that much. And even if you didn't grow up using manual focus lenses like I did, then it's still not an issue. You can learn how to use them just fine. I snagged this one for, it's in really damn good shape. It's about an 89% lens. It's only got one tiny scratch. When it actually comes to scratches on the front element of a lens like this, it's not an issue. It's always an issue on rear elements, no matter what sort of lens you got. But you got a tiny little scratch that you can barely see. You'll never, ever see that. How do these lenses fare on current Nikon DSLRs or even the Fuji? They work perfectly fine, of course. I was using this all the time on my old Nikon D3 before I got rid of it. Now I've got two more Nikon D3s, and of course it works perfectly on those, and D810, and D750, so you're not going to have any issue using these on any of those cameras since they have non-CPU lens data settings, and they'll work perfectly fine. Now you are going to need a monopod, and you would want a really nice neck strap, because you're never going to have this hanging off of your camera. Never, because it will rip the lens mount right out of your DSLR, and you're going to go shit, and then someone's going to tell you why you're so stupid to do that, because your camera was never made to haul one of these things off of its lens mount. They just ain't. It's made to mount there, but it's not made to hold these lenses because it's too much torque against those three screws. Those three screws that hold that lens mount in too, by the way, they have fine threads on them, and I don't need to tell you how easy it is to strip fine threads. It's rather easy. And these will certainly do it in short order. They will destroy your DSLR if you don't know how to correctly use them. So anyway, I've got my baby back here, and there's my new acquisition, which I've used 2 or 3 times in the past, but never owned, and this one is even in better shape. So, and I do consider both of these must-own lenses, with the caveat that you understand that if you're looking for a fast telly, you don't need to spend countless thousands and thousands of dollars, what you're limited in as far as either one of these as manual focus lens isn't anywhere near as much as you think it is. It's just not. You're going to be shooting concerts and dudes up on stage, or birds up in the trees, or moose or deer, whatever. That's fine. You're not going to get birds on flight with these. You're not going to get rabid squirrels ditzing around, but that's what you're going to be paying $6,000 for versus this $1,000. So what you're getting for another $1,000 is the autofocus capability to shoot that additional 10 to 15%. And you have to ask yourself, well, do I really need that? And it may be the case with me, for example, that you don't. So anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you later.